Can your God save you now?
Chaos erupts as Eliab fiercely defends David in a brutal battle. Using his warrior skills, he dodges blows and arrows while protecting David. Suddenly ambushed by Samuel, who doesn't recognize him at first.
Jonathan!
500 years after Moses.
Diving into Israel's troubled past, we recall the chaos during the time of the judges. The people asked for a king and Saul rose to power, but over time, pride led him to turn away from God. This marked the beginning of Israel placing its trust in men rather than in God, setting the stage for David's story.
How many are there?
In the valley of Elah, the giant Goliath mocks Israel and demands a challenger.
How many days?
While others tremble in fear, young David steps forward. Goliath hurls his spear. One grazes David, knocking him to the ground. Bruised but undeterred, David reaches for the stones he had gathered. The central question remains.
Can one stone change the course of history?
Welcome to Prophetic Movie Recaps. Today we delve into the details of House of David full Season 1 recap. If you're new to this channel, please do subscribe and let us know where you're watching from in the comments section. Your support is greatly appreciated, my dear friend. Thank you. The series begins in the quiet hills of Bethlehem, where David lives as a humble shepherd. While tending his flock, he discovers a young lamb wounded by a lion, symbolically referred to as the Old King. Knowing he is no match for the beast, David hides silently among the rocks until the lion disappears. Then, with gentle care, he lifts the injured lamb into his arms and carries it home, revealing the deep compassion, quiet courage, and shepherd's heart that will come to define his future calling.
Moses died.
Back at home, David arrives to find his father, Jesse, passionately addressing the family, recalling God's command to Joshua to be strong and courageous.
We must face fear.
Jesse's message emphasizes the need to overcome fear,
That's right.
urging trust in God's presence beyond it. The atmosphere shifts when the family notices blood on David. He warns them the old king has returned,
We truly kill him, the sheep cannot graze there.
revealing that Jesse's earlier effort to drive it away has failed.
I'm nothing more than a bastard in this house.
Instead of listening, the others mock David, implying he was too absorbed in playing his late mother's harp to help.
David!
Feeling alienated, he storms off and prays alone in the fields for guidance.
Show me who I am.
The next morning, David sits alone in the fields, softly strumming his harp as golden light spills over the hills. His thoughts drift to memories of his mother, her gentle voice guiding him in song, teaching him to worship Adonai through music. In these flashbacks, she sings beside him with joy, nurturing his faith and planting the seeds of devotion that would shape a king's heart. Saul's storyline begins amid the brutal Battle of Havilah, where he leads Israel against the Amalekites, fierce enemies ruled by the cannibal witch king Agag.
To keep no spoils of war.
God's command was clear. Saul was to utterly destroy them, taking no spoils. This divine directive tests Saul's obedience and the consequences of defiance.
We have news of a border village destroyed.
After the brutal Battle of Havilah, a weary crown prince Jonathan is alerted to a new threat, an attack on a remote Israelite border town.
Get me a horse.
Though exhausted, he rides out at once, compelled by duty. At the ruined village, he discovers smoldering remains and a young boy, one of the few survivors, rendered mute by trauma.
Speak only the truth, all right?
In a chilling flashback, the boy's memory reveals a towering figure moving through fire, shadows stretching over the carnage as flaming arrows fall. Haunted by his failure to protect the innocent, Jonathan kneels beside the child, silently vowing justice. Nearby, he spots an enormous handprint scorched into a wall. The sight awakens an ancient fear. He remembers the legends of the Nephilim, giants born of the sons of God and daughters of men. In the fields of Bethlehem, Jesse finds David practicing with his sling, his aim sharp and focused. Jesse sees his late wife's bold spirit in the boy. Yet David's heart stirs with longing.
Let me prove myself.
He questions why he's held back from fighting for Israel.
Israel should never have had a king.
Amid the argument, they rush home after hearing the lion roar and Ava scream. David arrives to find chaos. His sister shaken and the house damaged by the attack. He hides with her as the lion prowls nearby. Jesse, gripped by fear, cries out in despair. But David, resolute and stirred by purpose, takes his sling and sets out alone.
David, wait.
When Jonathan returns to the Israelite camp at Gilgal with the young survivor, his second-in-command expresses concern that the child might spread fear with tales of the attack. Jonathan dismisses it. The boy has yet to speak a word. Surveying the camp, now filled with spoils and prisoners, Jonathan's unease deepens. He brings the child to his family's tent, where King Saul's victory celebration is being prepared by his mother, Queen Ahinoam, and his sisters, Michal and Mirav. The queen urges Jonathan to consider finding a new wife, gently alluding to a lingering past sorrow. Asking about his younger brother's whereabouts,
I don't bite.
in his tent, Eshbal lounges with wine and a servant girl, indulging in leisure and flirtation. When she asks if he'll be king one day, he scoffs, preferring princely pleasures over the burdens of rule.
Oh, speaking of burdens.
Jonathan enters, frustrated, rebuking him for avoiding battle while others risk their lives, and for influencing Saul to keep the forbidden spoils.
King did not raise any objection.
Eshbal shrugs off the criticism, offering wine, but Jonathan, disillusioned and duty-bound, refuses and walks away.
Run along.
At Gilgal Mountain, Saul stands proudly before a newly raised stela, distributing the spoils of war to his men.
Double their portion.
The monument, inscribed with praises not for God but for Israel and Saul himself, marks a troubling shift.
It will be a memorial of all time.
When Jonathan approaches with grim news of a giant attack on a border town, Saul dismisses it as mere Philistine fear-mongering.
This is a Philistine trick.
Jonathan is deeply unsettled, not just by his father's apathy, but by the act of dividing the Amalekite spoils, defying God's command.
Why can God not speak to me?
Saul declares that the time of judges and prophets is over. The era of kings, of his rule, has begun.
These men who fought for us.
Honoring fallen tribal leaders, he insists, is more important than obeying a lone seer, a pointed reference to the prophet Samuel.
What have you done?
In Ramah, the prophet Samuel weeps and cries out to God, telling his assistant Silas that he must speak the word of the Lord and undo what has been done as a result of King Saul's disobedience. Meanwhile, Saul hosts a lavish feast to celebrate his victory, surrounded by the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel.
I am Adriel, son of Barzillai.
Adriel, the elder of Judah, praises Saul's leadership, declaring that he has brought unity and prosperity to the nation.
May your reign endure for all.
He publicly reaffirms his loyalty, strengthening Saul's political standing. The captured King Agag is paraded before the crowd for public humiliation. In a grand gesture, Saul raises a toast to Jonathan,
but he will be greater than I,
proclaiming that his son will one day surpass him as king, only for Eshbal to mockingly echo the praise for his perfect brother. The atmosphere is festive and self-congratulatory. Determined and armed with only his sling and his faith, David tracks the lion to a shadowy cave in the hills. Celebrations continue with games and wine, until the camera shifts to a grim reminder. Agag, the Amalekite king, sits shackled at Saul's feet, spared from execution despite God's command. General Abner watches in disapproval, having advised otherwise, destroying Agag's dark spell performance. Steeling himself with courage, David enters the dark lair, prepared to face the beast that has haunted his family and threatened his flock. Lion! Suddenly, the mood shatters as the prophet Samuel enters unannounced. The hall falls silent as Samuel confronts Saul before all,
The glory of Saul.
condemning him for claiming glory that belongs to God and for directly disobeying divine instruction by keeping Agag alive and seizing the spoils. The confrontation marks a turning point. God's judgment on Saul is about to unfold.
Speak with me alone.
Saul pulls the prophet aside in private, burning with indignation. He rebukes Samuel for humiliating him before the tribal elders,
Is that not enough?
accusing him of acting out of bitterness over Israel's rejection of his sons. But Samuel remains calm, his tone heavy with sorrow. He tells Saul that he has wept for him and still would, but the Lord has spoken. He reminds Saul that when he was humble and small in his own eyes, God lifted him up to be king. Now, swollen with pride, Saul has rebelled. His disobedience, sparing Agag and seizing spoils, has made him an enemy of God. Samuel declares that the Lord will hand Saul over to a twisted power, cursing his mind.
I am no sorcerer.
Saul protests, citing the sacrifices he and the people offered, but Samuel cuts him off, warning that obedience is greater than sacrifice and that arrogance and defiance are like idolatry.
Why are you not afraid of God?
Saul's failure lies in fearing the people more than God. As Samuel turns to leave, Saul grabs his robe, tearing it. Samuel tells him the kingdom has been torn from him and given to another. In the silence that follows, the curse begins to take hold.
What happened? Get away from me!
Saul unravels, tormented and broken. David lights a torch and enters the cave, repeating God's words to Joshua to strengthen himself with courage as he faces the lion. Meanwhile, Samuel returns to the tent where Agag sits in chains. Taking a sword, he declares God's judgment for Agag's bloodshed and executes him on the spot, hacking him to pieces before the people. Burning with anger, Samuel declares to the people that God is not mocked.
God is not mocked.
Then, as he departs from the tent, he tells Silas that they must go and find a new king. In the cave, David bravely kills the lion, proving his courage and faith. He emerges victorious, carrying the lion's claws. In a flashback to David's childhood, he and his mother, Nitsavet, witness a rare solar and lunar alignment. On their return, a man from Bethlehem berates them, accusing Nitsavet of dishonoring Jesse's house with her strange visions.
And would you like to know what I have seen?
Unshaken,
Dare you?
Nitsavet declares that while he will be forgotten, David's name will endure through history. As they walk, she speaks gently to David about learning to quiet his heart to hear God's voice, a practice he has yet to master but one that will shape his destiny. At home, David feels alienated, treated more as an outcast than a brother.
Not beyond the wall, David!
Seeking solitude, he ignores his mother's warning and crosses the wall,
Show me who I am.
unaware a ferocious lion stalked nearby. Just as danger descends, David's mother arrives, having followed him. With remarkable courage, she diverts the lion's attention,
I love you.
saving David but suffering mortal wounds in the process. When Jesse arrives, he quickly scolds and blames David for her injuries.
What have you done, David?
On her deathbed, Nitsavet lovingly reassures David, saying she has no regrets and that God has a powerful destiny for him.
What you would become.
Despite her final blessing, Jesse casts David out, sending him into the wilderness to tend sheep, an act that marks the beginning of David's journey toward greatness, shaped by rejection, solitude, and pain.
Tend the sheep.
In the present, David limps back to town, wounded but alive after his fierce battle with the old king. Memories of his mother and past rejection weigh heavily on him. Hoping for recognition, he instead receives a harsh slap from his father, who scolds him for disobedience rather than honoring his bravery. Undeterred, David turns to his sister Ava and gently gives her the lion's claws, assuring her the beast that once terrified her is gone. In the looming halls of Gibeah, Israel's new capital, the scene shifts to the troubled royal household. Michal, Saul's daughter, gently tends to the fevered king, tormented in his sleep.
Father has awakened.
When he suddenly awakens, she rushes to Jonathan, and together they anxiously speculate on what Samuel may have done.
What did Samuel do to you?
Elsewhere in the fortress, Saul meets privately with his military commander Abner and his wife Queen Ahinoam. He confides his fear that Samuel intends to anoint a new king, revealing his growing paranoia and desperation to retain power. Determined to act first, Saul orders Abner to track the prophet.
Bring me the one he anoints.
But Ahinoam, more ruthless than either man, pulls Abner aside and chillingly instructs him to eliminate the chosen one and his entire household.
I understand.
In Gath, we're introduced to King Achish as he convenes the 5 Philistine rulers, urging unity in response to Saul's recent victory over the Amalekites. He proposes a joint assault on Israel, but the other lords reject the idea,
And how do we know this is not just...
accusing him of being driven by personal vengeance for his father's death and lacking the strength to lead. Undeterred, Achish resolves to seek new gods to guide and empower him, hinting at a dark turn in his quest for power. At a vibrant wedding celebration in Bethlehem, hosted by one of the sons of the dignified Adriel, elder of Judah, the atmosphere shifts with the arrival of David's eldest brother Eliab, returning from war alongside their formidable cousin Joab, captain of the king's guard.
Daughters of King Saul.
They are accompanied by the royal sisters Michal and Merav,
Hello, people of Judah.
sent by the king to bless the couple, forgive their debts, and bestow gifts of land and sheep,
Land and sheep from our own herd.
a gesture reflecting royal favor and benevolence. Their presence elevates the occasion, blending local joy with royal prestige. Sharp and unpredictable, Merav notices one of Adriel's sons eyeing her as the dancing begins. As the wedding celebration continues into the night, David takes the stage and delivers a hauntingly beautiful performance that captivates everyone, especially Princess Michal. Clearly enamored by her, David catches her attention with the emotion woven into his music. When she approaches, he tells her the song was taught by his mother, rich with memory and meaning.
She's a good teacher.
Then, with quiet boldness, he offers to compose a new song just for her. Interrupted by Joab, David's hardened cousin,
For your efforts.
presents him with a war knife. Learning it came from the Amalekites, David recoils and throws it into the fire, refusing to accept a symbol tainted by his people's suffering. Eliab retrieves the knife and pulls David aside,
I don't care where it comes from.
warning him sternly not to provoke Joab, who is known for his ruthlessness.
Why is it you never defend my honor like that?
Tension erupts when Merav pointedly asks why Joab doesn't show the same zeal in defending her honor as he does Michal's. The next morning, Eliab practices with David's sling but fails to hit his targets. David takes it back and effortlessly demonstrates his skill, using the moment to ask Eliab to speak to Joab on his behalf about earning a place among the king's warriors. However, Abinadab, another brother, echoes their father Jesse's belief that there is no honor in serving Saul. Eliab disagrees but remains loyal to their father's wishes. When David insists, shooting 2 jars at once to prove his point, Eliab replies that David is not a man of blood. In response, David shows him the claw scars from the lion, but Eliab only offers to show him the brutal reality of war. In a tense training yard within the royal stronghold, Abner and Jonathan spar intensely. Between strikes, Abner urges the prince to prepare, warning that with Saul's mental state decline, the kingdom may soon need new leadership.
Forgive me, my king.
Before the conversation deepens, Saul suddenly appears, seemingly reinvigorated. Brushing off concern, he declares he's never felt better and unexpectedly challenges Jonathan to a duel.
What is an old man?
Their sparring turns fierce, almost violent, as Saul fights with raw intensity. Though he concedes Jonathan may one day be king, his words and steel make it clear. He remains king for now. In the scriptorium, Michal studies the story of Moses and the bronze serpent from Numbers 21 under High Priest Ahimelech's guidance. When Saul enters, he fondly recalls how his poor hometown never had access to the law, especially not for women, a privilege Michal now enjoys as the king's daughter. Reflecting on the tale, she questions its truth and wonders why, if it happened, God hasn't healed Saul.
He says I'm not healed.
Saul insists he has been healed and softens, revealing a necklace he had made for the queen, recalling their joyful youth.
Fear not, my child.
As David and Eliab walk together, a rare moment of vulnerability emerges. David gently asks about their mother, Nitzavet, and Eliab quietly admits his shame over how cruelly they treated her.
She was a woman of great conviction.
Acknowledging her deep faith and warmth, qualities they failed to honor in her lifetime. Their journey leads them to the charred ruins of the border town. There, Eliab reveals a giant's scorched handprint, echoing Jonathan's fear that the giants have returned. Disguised figures lurk nearby, but David is missing. David, wandering lost in thought, encounters King Achish of Gath, who is secretly seeking signs of the Anakim giants.
Are you a Hebrew?
Despite their enmity, they share a rare moment of connection over their mutual pain of familial rejection. For a brief time, understanding bridges their divide, revealing 2 young men weighed down by legacy and expectations. However, this fragile bond shatters when Achish turns on David,
Yes.
forcing Eliab to intervene and rescue him from danger.
Save you now.
Chaos erupts as Eliab fiercely defends David in a brutal battle. Using his warrior skills, he dodges blows and arrows while protecting David. Amid the desperate escape through shattered ruins, tension mounts until an enemy arrow strikes Eliab in the back, turning their flight into a desperate struggle for survival. As night falls in Gibeah, it becomes clear that Saul's recovery isn't as strong as he claims.
Sorry, Ushia.
A servant notices him stumbling, confused. In private, Saul tells Ahinoam he's afraid to sleep, haunted by things he can't explain. She tries to comfort him, reminding him of his past victories and how they now live in a place once ruled by enemies. As she calms him, Saul drops his tough act and longs for the simpler days of their early love. Late that night, haunted by memories of his wife, Jonathan prays for clarity. He offers God a cherished armband, a relic from his late wife, but his peace is shattered by screams. He rushes out to find the queen fleeing, with a mad Saul chasing her, sword in hand, raging wildly. Jonathan tries to intervene but is overpowered by the unhinged king. Just as the situation turns dire,
Has it come to this?
Abner steps in, and together he and Jonathan manage to restrain Saul, barely preventing a tragedy. Wounded and weak, Eliab urges David to leave him and escape.
It is too far.
But David, full of determination, refuses. He insists he's no longer the helpless boy Eliab once knew. He's stronger now, and he won't leave his brother behind.
Saul.
In a haunting and symbolic nightmare, a candle bleeds in Saul's room as Samuel's voice urges him to let go. He sees young Ahinoam holding baby Jonathan, but the warmth turns cold when she says Jonathan will never be king.
Destroyed us.
Saul is then drawn into a desolate desert, where he begs Samuel for a chance to make amends.
I will make a man!
Saul is thrown into a nightmare battlefield, shot by Achish and forced to watch Jonathan fall. As he holds his dying son, Samuel appears, takes the crown, and tells Saul to let go.
Let go of what is no longer.
Saul defiantly hurls a spear, only to wake and find he's killed his innocent servant, Yoshia. In the aftermath of David and Eliab's visit to Baal-Hatzor, David prays for his brother and helps restrain him as Jesse and the others remove the arrow and cauterize the wound. When David apologizes, Jesse demands obedience, not apologies. David remains by Eliab's side, soothing him with music. Meanwhile, tasked by Saul to track Samuel, Abner visits Doeg, a strange Edomite obsessed with animal experiments. Ignoring Ahinoam's harsh orders, Abner tells Doeg to only watch, not harm. Doeg hints they should convince Samuel to lift Saul's curse.
What curse?
Revealing he knows unsettling personal details about Saul's condition. Samuel returns home, heavy-hearted after God tells him to stop mourning Saul, as a new king has been chosen.
Lord asks me to commit treason.
Though loyal, Samuel fears anointing another will look like treason.
Think if only I had been a better father.
He feels guilty, wondering if his failures as a father helped cause the nation's troubles. Hila gently teases him, saying God's will can't be treason, and reminds him that God shapes history, not men.
And he is the great author of the story.
She encourages Samuel to trust the divine plan and hope the next king will be wiser and more faithful than Saul. Her words offer comfort as Samuel faces what comes next. In the wake of Yoshia's senseless death, Ahinoam visits his grieving mother, fabricating a noble tale of sacrifice to conceal Saul's guilt. She offers her personal scriptures as a sacred gift, vowing to share the mother's sorrow.
You take this.
The mother, overwhelmed, fails to see the cruel irony. Saul's house caused her loss, and Ahinoam's gift is not an offering of comfort, but a symbolic renunciation of her own fractured faith.
Still crying over the servant boy.
As Saul's children gather, Eshbal coldly downplays Yoshia's death, calling it a small price for power and a blessing for his mother. Jonathan condemns Eshbal's cruelty, declaring he's unfit to rule. Eshbal coldly hints that the king may soon turn against Jonathan to secure the throne.
I would never hurt him.
Saul, shaken, insists he didn't mean to harm Yoshia. Ahinoam shifts blame to Samuel and vows to take care of the fallout. Meanwhile, Doeg travels to Nob and cunningly coaxes one of the priests there to point him toward Samuel's whereabouts. As Samuel travels with his assistant, Silas asks him about who they are going to anoint, but he doesn't know yet.
My wife is with child.
When Silas reveals that his wife is set to give birth in less than a month, Samuel urges him to head back home, knowing that his current mission could bring with it a death sentence.
What will you name your child?
The queen meets with Abner and asks about his mother, who turns out to be a spiritist from Endor.
Does she still live?
Abner warns her against turning to witchcraft, saying it could cause more harm than good.
That's why it terrifies me.
He gave up his mother's ways after seeing the darkness it brought and reminds Ahinoam that God forbids such practices.
Ahinoam, I fled that life long ago.
But Ahinoam, skeptical of prophetic laws, ignores his warnings and demands to visit a medium in Endor. When they arrive, the medium pretends to be a simple seller and denies knowing anything.
Abner.
Even after they reveal who they are, she's afraid to help, since Saul outlawed spiritists earlier in his reign. But Ahinoam refuses to back down, determined to get what she came for, no matter the risk or cost.
The city of priests.
Doeg tracks down Silas as he's returning home, pretending to seek a seer's guidance to hide his true intent.
There's not a big...
Trying to evade the conversation, Silas is knocked out and restrained. When Silas wakes, Doeg coldly threatens torture to force him to reveal Samuel's location.
It's true, he serves enough.
Silas, steadfast in his faith, declares himself a servant of the Most High, but Doeg dismisses this, driven solely by ruthless ambition with no loyalty beyond himself. Trying to survive, Silas attempts to mislead Doeg by sending him the wrong way, but Doeg's sharp instincts see through the lie.
I do not serve Yahweh.
The tension escalates as Doeg mercilessly begins to torture Silas, showing his brutal determination to get what he wants. Meanwhile, Ahinoam, cloaked in desperation, pressures the wary medium to reveal what may be required to heal Saul's madness. Despite fear of reprisal, the medium yields, agreeing to summon forbidden powers. With trembling hands, she chants dark incantations to Baal, setting a chilling tone as ancient taboos are shattered, highlighting Ahinoam's growing defiance of divine authority and the unraveling moral order around Saul's house. Ahinoam returns with the medium, lying to Jonathan that she's just an artisan.
I noticed your scriptures were gone.
When he questions the absence of her scriptures and affirms God's rule over their house, Ahinoam insists Saul rules now, and Jonathan must respect her until his time comes. Upon arrival in Bethlehem, Samuel assures the local elders that he comes in peace.
I come to worship the Most High with you.
He asks for Jesse's family but soon learns that Jesse is no longer welcomed among the elders because he fathered a bastard child, David, with the daughter of an enemy, Nitzavet.
God is funny.
Samuel laughs at God's sense of humor and proceeds to Jesse's homestead.
He told me they lived in a great valley.
After uncovering the aftermath of the giant attack on Baal Hatzor, King Achish is guided by his men to the ominous Valley of the Giants, believed to be the dwelling place of the feared Anakim. As they descend deeper into the valley, they pass a chilling hill of skulls, grim remnants of those who dared enter before. His men, visibly unnerved, warn him that none who enter ever return. But Achish, driven by ambition and curiosity, presses forward undeterred. At a giant stone door in the mountain, Achish declares his wish to ally with the giants.
Lord King of Gath,
Orpah, their mysterious leader, answers and warns him.
yet I wish to be friends of yours.
Ignoring his men's fear, Achish enters alone, disappearing into the mountain's dark depths. Meanwhile, Samuel arrives unannounced at Jesse's house, bringing a large cow for a holy offering, and asks him to gather all his sons.
Gather your son.
Inside the cave, Achish impresses Orpah by knowing her name means Mother of Giants.
Is Mother of Giants.
He proposes an alliance between Gath and the Anakim, asking to meet their leader.
Then you must speak to the gods.
Orpah warns this means facing the gods and likely death. Undeterred, Achish offers riches, peace, and revenge against Israel for driving them out.
I offer vengeance.
In Bethlehem, Samuel seeks the one God has chosen to anoint among Jesse's sons. Eliab, Jesse's eldest, warns his father not to trust the prophet.
The seer has gone mad. I saw it at Gilgal.
Believing Samuel has gone mad. Despite the tension, Samuel begins his inspection with Eliab, convinced at first by his stature and presence that he must be the chosen one. But as he looks deeper, Samuel discerns fear in Eliab's heart. One by one, Samuel evaluates each of Jesse's sons, only to reject them all. Confused and concerned, he confronts Jesse, questioning why he would disobey and withhold a son.
Are there no other sons of Jesse?
Jesse falters, and it becomes clear that David, the youngest and most overlooked, was left in the fields.
No one will sit.
As Jesse sends Ava to find David, Samuel scolds him for hiding the one chosen by God,
Of what I intend to magnify.
warning not to fear the light God will reveal.
Because that would be madness.
Meanwhile, Eliab, jealous and afraid, suspects Samuel wants to harm David.
Son of your shame.
Furious, he nearly attacks but is held back by his brothers. David arrives, and Samuel immediately senses something different about him. Honoring him with reverence, Samuel examines David's heart and is overwhelmed by what he finds: purity, strength, and humility. He is quietly amused by how God sees beyond human expectations. He assures David that he will become someone special beginning today. Intrigued by God's wonder.
God is funny.
Meanwhile, in the cave, a satisfied Orpah introduces Achish to her giant sons. The greatest among them steps forward and introduces himself as Goliath.
I am Goliath.
At the same time as David kneels, Samuel anoints him with oil. In a moment that stuns all present, Samuel proclaims that the Lord has rejected the house of Saul and has chosen David as his royal son and the true king of Israel.
King of Israel.
The anointing marks a divine shift, as God's favor visibly passes from Saul's dynasty to the shepherd boy now destined for the throne. Elsewhere, Ahinoam accompanies Saul, now in his right mind, as he resumes his place on the throne before the nobles of Israel.
Protector.
As Saul looks out over his followers, Adriel proclaims his greatness and calls for his house to endure forever.
Endure forever.
Saul sits on his throne, uncertain. David has a supernatural vision of a peaceful stream where water turns to fire at his touch, signaling divine power. Samuel tells him he was transported by the Spirit, like the patriarchs before him. Though David is confused, Samuel warns that fear doesn't require understanding. He admits he resisted choosing David, but God sees not just who David is, but who he will become. Samuel glimpses a fiery vision of Saul's downfall, sensing the intense, dangerous power within David.
He will try to kill us both.
He leaves quickly, fearing Saul's wrath if their meeting is discovered.
If he's not.
He has gone mad.
What if he's not?
While Eliab believes Samuel has lost his mind in old age, Jesse, having witnessed Samuel's prophetic power, is more open to his message.
No, they cannot know this.
Still, Eliab warns the family to stay silent about David's anointing, knowing that if Saul hears of it, he would see it as treason and have them all executed.
What do we do with David?
David's vision resumes revealing a radiant warrior, likely the angel of the Lord, before he's suddenly pulled back to reality without answers. David awakens to Eliab, who warns him to stay silent about the vision and claims it isn't from God, showing deep skepticism and fear.
The seer is beyond his time.
Their tense exchange is interrupted by the arrival of their cousin Joab, captain of the king's guard, who brings an unexpected royal summons, not for the older, more experienced brothers Eliab or Abinadab, but for David. As King Saul sits in self-imposed silence, refusing visitors, his son Eshbaal enters, offering comfort or distraction with a tavern visit. But Saul brushes him off, only asking that he stop upsetting his mother. Still eager to please, Eshbaal pitches a grand vision of transforming Gibeah into a cultural hub to keep the people entertained and loyal.
We build grand theaters for the arts.
Saul acknowledges the idea's merit but doubts Eshbaal's ability to lead such an effort.
It is not about when you were born.
When Eshbaal suggests Saul's rejection is just about him being the youngest, Saul insists the issue runs deeper, something lacking at the core of who Eshbaal is. As Eshbaal prepares to leave, Yair, elder of Dan, bursts in, accusing him of defiling his daughter.
Saul has betrayed me!
Tension spikes when Saul, struck by madness, goes silent. Eshbaal cruelly mocks Yair, showing no regret. Before things get worse, Queen Ahinoam steps in, taking charge.
I invoke the law of Moses.
Yair demands justice, citing the law of Moses, demanding that Eshbaal either marry his daughter or be stoned. Calmly, Ahinoam points out the law would also condemn Yair's daughter, showing the complexity of the situation. She orders Yair to leave, promising the issue will be addressed the next day.
The king has taken enough!
Meanwhile in Jerusalem, as Joab delivered the king's summons for David, Jesse grows uneasy, sensing danger, and even Eliab hesitates. But Joab stands firm, bound by duty. David, confused and nervous, agrees to go. He shares a tearful goodbye with Ava, who's clearly scared for him. His farewell with Jesse is cold and distant, though Jesse shows concern by sending Eliab to protect him. Later in Gibeah, Eshbaal plays a game with Merav, who's worried about the accusation against him. Eshbaal, confident and dismissive, believes their mother will forgive him and says he can do what he wants. Merav warns him about Dinah's pain, but Eshbaal angrily dismisses her and storms off.
Who are you to tell me how to behave?
That evening at dinner, tension runs high in the house of Saul. Eshbaal jokes sarcastically, saying his mistake didn't cost a slave's life like Saul's past failures. Saul snaps, angrily rebuking him. The mood worsens until Ahinoam steps in and dismisses everyone for a private talk. Speaking gently, she recalls a childhood memory, Eshbaal pretending to swim through the sky until he fell, and she cared for his injury. Looking at him now, she sadly says she'll have to clean another wound. Showing both her love for him and the emotional weight of dealing with his mistakes. Her words blend comfort with sorrow, revealing the deep strain within the family. The next day, Yair confronts Eshbaal in court again. To avoid bloodshed, the queen cites the law of Moses from Numbers 35 and banishes Eshbaal to Endor, a city of refuge. Eshbaal angrily claims their home has always felt like a prison, just as the Philistines hoped.
I'm glad to be free of it!
Merav pleads with their mother, but she holds firm.
Mother!
As Eshbaal is taken away, Merav follows, and they share an emotional, painful goodbye, filled with sorrow and unresolved feelings. After anointing David, Samuel goes to meet his assistant, Silas, only to find a burned corpse and the word traitor scrawled on a nearby stone. Loaded into a carriage, Eshbaal is taken away from Gibeah, briefly catching sight of David on the way out. Upon arriving at the palace, Eliab refuses to leave his brother's side until he knows why David was summoned. Joab agrees. David is brought before Queen Ahinoam and her enigmatic advisor, the witch Bisay.
Why is he here?
There, they learn that David has been summoned to ease the king's troubled mind by playing music for him. After Eliab and Joab leave, the queen fabricates a story that Saul was bitten by a serpent and now suffers from madness. She claims Bisay saw a lion in a vision, which she took as a sign from the goddess Batet.
Is the god of music.
Believing David's music could help, they summoned him. Though uneasy about the pagan idea, David agrees out of duty and promises to keep Saul's condition secret.
You have nothing to worry about.
As David waits outside the throne room, King Saul goes furious. David is overwhelmed by anxiety, panic sets in.
Make that choice and send him away.
Michal, Saul's daughter, notices and gently comforts him, urging him to imagine playing just for her.
Just play to me.
Encouraged, David begins to play. His haunting, gentle music slowly calms the room. Saul's restless spirit settles, Ahinoam watches with hope, and the court grows still. In that moment, David's music becomes more than a performance. It becomes a source of healing and peace. His gift touches everyone present, transforming fear into calm and revealing his deeper purpose in the palace.
It was incredible.
After the performance, David feels joyful, not just for soothing Saul but sensing a spark of interest from Michal.
And Michal is the daughter of the king.
He's hopeful and energized, but Eliab warns him to stay quiet and avoid attention, fearing it could bring danger. But at this point, no one else in the house of Saul is wary of David, except for Bisay, who senses something unique in David's spirit. Her concern is brushed aside by the queen, who sees him as nothing more than a musician.
He's just a musician.
Late at night, unable to sleep, David sneaks into the royal scriptorium, drawn by curiosity. He's caught by Michal, who scolds him at first but softens when she sees his reverence.
No.
David admits he was never taught to read or allowed to hear public scripture in Judah.
Should I call the guards?
Kezia, Michal's assigned servant, discovers them and wants to alert the guards, but Michal dismisses her. Moved, Michal begins to read aloud from the Song of Moses, her voice filling the quiet room. She wistfully confesses that she's always wished to hear it sung rather than spoken. David listens intently, captivated by her voice and the words.
It's lovely.
Later that night, inspired by both the scripture and Michal's presence, David sits alone with his harp, quietly composing. The next day he performs the piece he created, his own musical rendition of the Song of Moses, before Saul and Michal. His performance is powerful and deeply moving, stirring something profound in both of them.
Was that the Song of Moses?
Later that night, as Michal's servant quietly escorts David back to the scriptorium, Eliab and Joab meet privately with Abner. Abner warns them of a potential uprising, a pretender from Judah who threatens Saul's reign and seeks their support. Joab agrees to deal with it. Afterward, Eliab expresses doubt about turning on their own people over a possible false threat. But Joab insists, questioning his loyalty. Jonathan interrupts with news of a border raid. As they get ready to ride out, Eliab looks for David but can't find him. In the peaceful royal scriptorium, David meets with Michal again. Touched by his love for scripture, she offers to teach him to read. As they sit together, Michal admits her growing fear that her family is cursed and forgotten by God.
Our family's been cursed.
David listens kindly, then shares how he felt the same after his mother died, but found comfort by praising God even in grief. He gently assures her that God hasn't left them, and that he hopes his music will bring peace to her father.
You deserve to be adored.
He also tells her he wants to love her with the care she deserves. Moved, Michal gives him his first lesson, a chit with his name written on it.
Thank you.
Terrified that Silas may have betrayed the location of his family home, Samuel rushes to find his wife, Helah.
Silas was murdered.
To his relief, she's alive and well. After explaining what has happened, Samuel tells her they must now flee from Saul. As Eshbal's exile caravan nears Endor, hidden attackers ambush under nightfall, slaughtering the guards and setting the brush in his carriage ablaze. Guards! Forced to flee into the dark, Eshbal stumbles through the chaos, terrified and lost. He suddenly encounters a tall, shadowy warrior who says little but offers an eerie invitation. With no one left to trust and nowhere else to run, Eshbal hesitates,
Are you coming?
then steps forward, choosing the unknown path. On the heights of Gibeah's walls, David lifts his voice in song to Adonai, unaware that Michal watches and listens in secret from behind a shadowed opening within the palace. Abner rides to Judah and meets with Adriel, the senior elder. Adriel pretends to be repulsed by Gibeah's pagan carvings, but Abner sees through the act and presses him for the truth. Adriel admits that Samuel has been making sacrifices throughout Judah but refuses to name others involved unless he receives assurances.
What do you have in mind?
Abner reports to Ahinoam, uneasy about Adriel's loyalty, which seems self-serving.
Give me, but that is not the answer.
Bisay, the witch of Endor, suggests displaying strength.
A union.
Ahinoam agrees and plans a political marriage to distract the people and win support. Preparations begin immediately to summon Adriel for the proposed union.
Had no king.
Michal teaches David to read and shares that she doesn't want a princess's life. She dreams of simple village living. David downplays his role in Saul's healing, praising Michal instead. He hints at carrying deep secrets but is interrupted by Ahinoam, who warns him never to be alone with Michal again. She reminds David his only role in Gibeah is to soothe the king.
Your sole purpose is to comfort the king.
As she leaves, David lightens the mood by teasing Reuben, the border town survivor, for not keeping a better watch. In her chambers, Ahinoam discusses strategy with Saul and Besay.
Do not trust magic.
With magic failing, Ahinoam insists Adriel's loyalty must come through marriage. Saul gifts her a sentimental necklace, and she encourages him to stay strong.
Wanted to see me?
Michal appears in a red gown, delighting Saul and lifting the room's mood. David meets Eliab and learns of more border raids.
Glad to see you are still alive.
He mentions Reuben's troubling dreams of giants, then notices Michal, tearful and distant, passing by. Saul and Ahinoam have arranged her marriage to one of Adriel's sons, leaving David shaken and silent.
King Saul of Israel!
The moment arrives as King Saul welcomes Adriel's house and the tribe of Judah into the hall.
Of the great tribe of Judah.
After they settle, Adriel gives a speech, thanking Saul for his hospitality despite the harsh encounters they faced on their journey. Saul publicly announces the engagement before the entire court, solidifying the alliance and shocking David to his core. Struggling to contain his emotions, David can barely perform his music for the royal gathering.
Shepherd, play!
Meanwhile, Michal endures the boorish bravado of Adriel's sons, who drone on about their battlefield exploits. One of them stares at her possessively, while Adriel himself crosses a disturbing line.
Princess.
Publicly admiring Michal's beauty and remarking that he would marry her himself if his wife were dead.
Wake up every day a happy man.
King Saul interrupts the conversation, distracting Adriel from his daughter. Joab vents to Abner, calling Adriel's sons unworthy and the union pointless. Abner dismisses him, warns him to forget Michal, and hints David is the real threat.
You cannot go through with this.
I have no choice. Go.
David follows Michal, but she sends him back, reminding him of their roles. When he tries again, Eliab stops him.
You will not speak a word.
David wants to reveal the truth, but Eliab warns Saul will see him as a threat and urges him to play music. Adriel's youngest son, Jordan, approaches Merav, sensing that they both feel overlooked and unimportant. He as the youngest and she as the rebellious one.
I'm the rebellious disappointment.
The two bond as they watch the suitors compete in displays of exaggerated manliness, while Michal sits nearby, nodding politely, resigned to a loveless marriage. From a distance, Saul notices his daughter Merav speaking with Jordan in the shadows. During talks, Adriel asks for a scroll about Judah, but Saul grows paranoid, haunted by a vision of Agag. David's music calms him. Adriel, sensing weakness, questions Saul's control. Saul recovers and denies Adriel's scroll request but grants him a council seat.
Celebrate our children.
Later, Saul calls him a jackal, but Ahinoam assures him he's their jackal now. Watching Saul interact with his wife, David notes how good it must be to have married for love.
The love between you and the queen.
When Saul asks who should marry Michal, David boldly suggests himself.
She should marry me.
Saul laughs.
You are a funny one.
But the moment makes him realize Michal doesn't love any of Adriel's sons. Meanwhile, Merav's clear feelings for Jordan catch even Saul's attention. Seeing their chemistry, Saul changes his plan,
After long consideration,
deciding to offer Merav's hand to Jordan instead.
Merav and Jordan.
This shift spares Michal from a forced marriage and brings her great relief. David's courage, though dismissed, helps open Saul's eyes to his daughter's true feelings.
Are you happy with this?
Merav seems content with her father's decision. Meanwhile, David quietly follows Michal after Saul's announcement and finds her alone in the corridor. Though the relief in her eyes is unmistakable, their time is brief. David knows he can't stay, aware that being caught alone with her again could endanger them both. Merav tells Saul she always felt he favored Michal and didn't care about her.
I was the surprised one.
Saul gently says Merav is like her mother, strong-willed, and that he does care about her happiness. He asks her to watch Adriel's house closely.
Will not be divided.
Merav agrees, promising to protect Saul's legacy. Joab attacks David, accusing him of betraying Saul's house and corrupting Michal.
Robbed his daughter.
He threatens to kill him unless he stays away.
Swear it!
But David refuses,
Try it.
saying he has a purpose in Saul's house and questions Joab's own path. Shocked, Joab lets him go. Meanwhile, Ahinoam visits Michal and warns her against falling for David, calling him a shameful bastard unworthy of a king's daughter.
Father was a poor donkey herder.
Michal defends him, noting Saul was once a herdsman too. But Ahinoam insists David could bring lasting harm to their house. She admits Michal's heart may be his for now but reminds her she wasn't born to be a trophy wife.
You are not a trophy.
She was born to be a shield to protect their family and kingdom. She urges Michal to see the bigger picture and choose duty over desire.
It will serve to protect your family.
Knowing the future of their house may rest on her decisions. Jonathan comforts Reuben, who's still scared by nightmares of giants.
I will protect you.
Though Jonathan promises to protect him, Reuben doubts him, saying he's too small. Saul and Adriel stand before the court to finalize their alliance.
To Mirav.
As a symbolic gesture, Saul presents Adriel with a copy of the sacred Genesis scroll containing Jacob's blessing. Honored, Adriel begins reading aloud to the gathered nobles. But as he recites some words, the oppressive spirit, manifesting again as Agag, whispers to Saul, fueling his paranoia that the Lion of Judah will rise, implying that Adriel threatens his throne.
Thief.
Saul angrily stops Adriel, recites Jacob's blessing, accuses Adriel of scheming for power, cancels the marriage. In madness, he attacks Ahinoam, choking her and tearing her necklace. Saul banishes Adriel, screams and tears down Judah's flag. His daughters gather pieces of Ahinoam's broken necklace. Merav, overwhelmed by grief, runs off, calling her family cursed.
This family is a curse.
The court falls silent, shocked by the scene. That night, Saul lies restless, tormented by the spirit, as Ahinoam keeps watch. Bisay arrives, urging her to use sorcery to drive it out, claiming Saul, not her magic, is the true danger. When Ahinoam says sorcery is illegal without the king's seal, Bisay tells her to take it. She does. Unable to sleep after destroying the marriage deal, Saul wanders into the throne room where he finds David.
Forgive me, my king.
He speaks with regret about hurting Merav and shares his fear of being misunderstood and alone. He says all men want the throne but don't understand its burden. David comforts him, saying his family still loves him.
They will forgive you.
Saul, moved, invites David to sit on the throne, but David politely refuses.
I should go to bed.
After Saul leaves, David quietly sits on the throne, curious and thoughtful. Unbeknownst to him, Michal sees the moment from the shadows, watching David with a mix of wonder and sorrow.
Days of the great rebellion.
Orpah, mother of the giants, tells the story of how angels, led by Shemaiah, rebelled and were cast from heaven.
Use wives from the daughters of men.
On earth, they desired beautiful daughters of men, and fathered the Nephilim, giants with great power.
To punish the angels for their sin.
God punished the angels, locking them in darkness, while humans hunted their children. Now only Goliath and his brothers remain. As Orpah ends her tale in their hidden cave, Goliath questions why they must still live in fear.
And why do we still hide in this cave?
He wonders if they are cursed to hide forever despite being the last of their kind. In Gath, a Philistine king questions Achish's claims, insisting the armies will only unite if they witness the power he boasts of. At the sound of an approaching rumble, Achish proudly announces that his promised strength has arrived. Outside the gate, he greets Goliath, who is pulling a carriage carrying Orpah, welcoming them warmly and offering anything they desire.
Allow my servants to look after you.
Achish sends the other Philistine leader to gather the kings in the valley of Elah, declaring that the time has come to launch their attack.
The time is now.
Meanwhile, David plays calming melodies for Saul late into the night. Michal watches and recalls her vision of David on the throne, now wondering about a future she still doesn't understand.
You sound like Mother's mystic.
Merav finds her and relates, admitting she once dreamed of their brother Eshbal's return.
I lost him.
They share a quiet moment of sympathy, Michal for Merav's broken engagement, and Merav for Michal's growing but conflicted feelings for David. Michal confesses she had begun to fall for him but is now uncertain after Ahinoam's revelations about his past. Merav, unsurprised, warns her that women are merely ladders for men's ambition, and tells her to accept it.
With a blessed gift upon you.
As Saul and David share a heart-to-heart, the king praises David's musical gift and confides that he, too, was once nothing more than a humble herdsman.
You can be anything.
He encourages David to believe that anything is possible, that one's beginnings do not define their destiny. With a touch of dramatic irony, Saul urges him never to let the words of any man steal his future. Meanwhile, Kezia brings Reuben to Doeg's lab, where Doeg cunningly tries to manipulate him into revealing what Samuel told Saul.
Samuel?
Yes.
Distracted by gruesome experiments, Reuben hesitates, then finally gives in, confessing that Samuel has anointed a new king to replace Saul.
Anoint?
In Gath, Achish proudly unveils a massive shield and sword forged for Goliath by master Mycenaean blacksmiths, using ancient metallurgical secrets said to have been taught to mankind by the fallen sons of God, an echo from the Book of Enoch. Goliath, awed by the divine craftsmanship of his new weapons, puts them to terrifying use, testing their strength on Achish's own soldiers in a brutal and awe-inspiring display of power.
Aid in my victory.
Achish hosts a lavish feast for Orpah, bragging that she and her sons will soon enjoy riches and power fit for royalty. But Orpah isn't interested in luxury, she wants revenge.
Your throne.
She demands that Achish give up his throne and let Goliath rule as a living god if they win the Israelites. When Achish refuses to kiss her ring in submission, she ends the meeting.
No.
As she leaves, Orpah warns him coldly.
Dad, be careful.
Once giants awaken, they never go back to sleep. Saul, Jonathan, and Abner receive word that 2 Philistine nations are preparing for war. Saul scoffs at the threat, boasting that they'll crush them just as they did the Amalekites. Thunder rumbles ominously as if signaling divine disapproval, but Saul pays no mind and walks away. Jonathan, concerned, questions his father's dismissive attitude toward the giants. But Saul brushes it off, claiming they're nothing more than a trick. He warns Jonathan that no one, not even his own son, will take his throne, and boldly challenges the Philistines to witness the strength of a true king. David meets Michal, who says his past doesn't change how she feels, but asks why he kept it secret.
Am I going to lose you now?
David admits he feared being left behind and now fears losing her. He suggests they run away and live a quiet life. Michal, torn, says her mother would send soldiers after her.
Between desire and duty.
She tells David there's a difference between love and duty, and sadly admits they can't be together. As Goliath pulls Orpah's carriage, Achish considers launching an ambush, but before he can act, Doeg appears and proposes a more cunning alternative. In David's absence, Saul spirals into another fit of madness, attended by Merav, Ahinoam, and Bisay the medium. Bisay confesses she is nearing the limits of her knowledge and must attempt a dangerous remedy, one that could either cure Saul or kill him. With Ahinoam's consent, they draw Saul's blood. Bisay mixes it with a potion and gives it to him to drink. Meanwhile, David sneaks into the royal quarters to see Michal, but is caught by Eliab. Fearing David's presence will bring a curse upon Saul's house, Eliab tries to force him out.
Now.
Their confrontation is broken up by Jonathan, who steps in to defend David, insisting that he belongs there. Jonathan and David rush to Saul's chamber after hearing strange noises and find Bisay performing a ritual.
This ends now.
Jonathan demands her removal, saying God, not Ahinoam, rules the house. As they argue, Bisay points at David, claiming he's the cause of Saul's suffering.
You will never be king.
Jonathan dismisses her, but she warns he'll never be king. She storms out, leaving Ahinoam and Jonathan staring at David in fear. In the cave, Goliath's brother expresses frustration of hiding again. Orpah slaps him and says freedom will come, but not yet. Since their hiding place is no longer safe, they must move. She insists a new life can't start until the old one ends, urging patience and obedience for now. Late at night, David plays the lyre for Saul until his fingers bleed. Saul, soft for once, tends to him and admits his guilt and fear.
I am the only one to blame of all that is.
He speaks as if David is Jonathan, confusing the two. David, disturbed, apologizes for failing to help and quietly says it's time he left.
I have failed to ease your mind.
On the other side, the giants gather in a dark cave, chanting loudly as they drink deeply from their wineskins. Their wild celebration echoes through the cavern, a fierce and haunting ritual of power in the shadows.
There are a few more skins left.
Orpah leaves to find more wine and sneaks into a quiet storage cave. Suddenly, Doeg ambushes her, falsely claiming loyalty to Saul's house. Despite her fight, Doeg stabs her with an Israelite blade. Her scream echoes through the night, bringing Goliath to her side. He finds her bleeding and dying. With her last breath, Orpah commands Goliath to avenge her murder.
Avenge me.
Sparking a fierce vow of revenge against the house of Saul. In Gibeah the next morning, as David prepares to leave, Merav stops him.
I can do no good here.
Acknowledging that his presence only delays Saul's madness, it does not cure it, much like Bisay's magic. She asks if David has a message for Michal.
Our futures are not aligned.
Slightly confused, David asks her to tell Michal that their futures aren't aligned, but that he still loves her. Then David leaves Gibeah.
There's no other way out.
Meanwhile, Jonathan saddles his horse and explains to Abner that he is going to find Samuel, the only one who can help his father now. Driven by desperation, Jonathan rides to Mount Sinai, the sacred and mysterious mountain where he believes Samuel might be hiding. Alone, he climbs its rocky slopes as the wind howls like an ancient warning. Near the summit, a sharp headache drops him to his knees, unleashing vivid visions of his father Saul's death, and his own. Shaken and afraid, Jonathan awakens breathless to find a weathered tent. Suddenly ambushed by Samuel, who doesn't recognize him at first, Jonathan is soon warmly welcomed by Samuel and Hela, who remember him as the boy Samuel once taught.
You remain a gracious host.
Seated by the fire, Jonathan urgently asks why a curse seems to cling to his father. Samuel solemnly explains that Saul's downfall comes from his refusal to relinquish power, a king who has made himself a god, breaking the first commandment.
It changes nothing.
Despite Samuel's pleas, he cannot heal Saul, and Jonathan's visions may or may not come true. When Jonathan reaffirms his loyalty to God, Samuel reveals a powerful truth. He has anointed a new king, one whose reign will endure.
A king whose reign will know.
As Jonathan departs, Samuel warns him to pass cautiously through the great valley, sensing a growing darkness there. As David returns to Bethlehem, Saul suffers a violent fit, haunted by visions of Goliath.
No.
Panicked, he calls for David, but Ahinoam gently explains he's gone.
I need him to play for me.
I know.
Fearful of losing Saul, she vows to find another way and in a final act of hope or desperation, gives him the last of Bisay's dark potion. Meanwhile, enraged, Goliath and his brothers storm out, terrifying some local Israelites as they vow to kill all the Hebrews in the house of Saul. Back in Bethlehem, Ava and Jesse see David approaching from afar,
David!
both overwhelmed with joy to welcome him home. Following Samuel's advice, Jonathan passes by Elah and witnesses a massive Philistine host assembling. Racing on to Gibeah, he reports the news to Saul.
The Philistines have assembled.
Those scouts have already confirmed it. As his father announces his plan to face the Philistines,
Together we shall do what we have always done.
Jonathan stands faithfully by his side, cheering him on alongside the other Israelites. Later, in Gath, Goliath finally kneels before Achish and offers to fight and kill Saul in his name, declaring his intent to prove who the true gods are.
Who the real gods are.
Moving on, we learn that Saul has summoned every able-bodied man in Israel to join the battle against the Philistines. Netharniel, Jesse's cowardly fourth son who shares his father's contempt for Saul, begs not to be sent.
He will take his place, send me.
He will take my place.
But Jesse insists he must fight alongside his brothers, for God and for Israel.
For God and for Israel.
When David volunteers to take Netharniel's place, Jesse refuses, prompting David to quietly question why he's always left behind, tending sheep,
For once.
as if his father has a deeper reason for keeping him hidden from the fight. A massive Philistine force gathers in the valley of Elah, while Goliath and his giant brethren survey the valley. Achish boasts to his fellow lords that he has finally unified the Philistine armies.
Our forces unified.
Across the valley, Saul complains that he has fought and bled for Israel for 30 years, but Abner gently rebukes him, urging him to focus on the battle ahead.
Complaining.
When Saul questions who he is and why he was anointed,
Tell me who I am.
Abner assures him that he is a conqueror, a uniter of the tribes who has lifted his people from fear, personally saved Abner, and given him purpose.
That's who you are to me, my king.
Embracing his friends, they prepare to face the Philistine host.
Over 150,000 Philistines.
The vast Philistine army, more than 150,000 strong, stands ready. Joab confidently vows that 10 Philistines will fall for every Israelite. Jonathan examines the sword of a nervous young soldier, Eleazar, and gently reassures him that God fights for Israel. When asked if Samuel will bless the battle, Jonathan hesitates and offers silence instead of certainty,
God wills it.
choosing comfort over truth.
Who can stand against us?
As Saul moves among the troops, Adriel, the elder of Judah, arrives with 25,000 men, publicly pledging support but privately warning Saul that their conflict is far from forgotten. Netharniel, David's fearful brother, cowers while most soldiers cheer defiantly as Saul rides proudly at their head. Meanwhile, David and Jesse remain in Bethlehem, continuing their daily routines.
You the glory in everything that we do.
David tends the sheep and helps with chores, the quiet countryside a stark contrast to the chaos of war. Samuel arrives unexpectedly and is warmly welcomed by David, who leads him to meet Jesse. As they share a humble meal, Jesse apologizes, saying he's already given his best to the king's war effort.
Did you?
Samuel challenges this claim. Seizing the moment, David expresses frustration at being left behind.
I want to go fight.
Samuel responds with a cryptic story about olive trees and their purpose in different seasons. Frustrated, Jesse demands Samuel's purpose, only to learn the prophet has come to atone for the house's sins with a sacrifice. With vultures circling overhead, eagerly awaiting fresh carrion, Achish rides forth from the Philistine host. From across the field,
Seems angry.
Jonathan empathizes with how Achish seems driven by anger. But Saul insists that if the roles were reversed, Jonathan would lead with strategy, not emotion. Achish plants his flag, followed by representatives from Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Gaza, Ekron notably absent. The Philistine army has swelled to a staggering 200,000, and the lords press Achish to begin the assault. But Achish refuses. He wants more than a military victory. He wants to break Israel's spirit. To that end, Goliath steps forward from the Philistine lines, a towering, fearsome figure who silences the battlefield with his presence.
Where's your king?
The Israelites are stunned. Even the hardened Joab calls him a god of earth. Goliath challenges Saul, proposing a divine contest, Israel's God versus the Philistines, to see whose power prevails. A shadow of dread falls over the Israelite ranks. As Saul listens, he envisions Goliath crashing his skull,
Gather yourself.
causing him to fall from his horse and shatter the vial of Bisay's potion that kept his madness at bay. Lost and overwhelmed, Saul flees, promising his daughter to anyone who defeats the giant.
Offer my daughter in marriage!
As night falls, David plays his lyre for Samuel, his music drifting softly through the quiet hills.
Why do we wait?
He voices his frustration,
I am ready.
ready for battle, yet still confined here. Samuel, calm and patient, shifts David's focus to his mother, a woman of deep love and purpose, likening her to his own mother, Hannah, whose handmade robe he treasures as a sacred symbol of faith and prayer.
I've been seeing things.
David then shares a recurring vision, a lush garden atop a mountain which Samuel identifies as Eden, guarded by a warrior with a drawn sword. Samuel explains this figure is the captain of the Lord's armies.
Walls of Jericho fell down.
He recalls how Jericho's walls fell not through might, but because Joshua humbled himself, asking not if God was on his side, but if he was on God's.
Why show these visions to me?
David, confused, wonders why he sees such visions yet remains sidelined. Samuel gently reminds him he's thinking in yesterday's terms.
You speak as if today is yesterday.
Citing Ecclesiastes 3, he tells David there is a time to act and a time to wait, and David's time will come. Several days, Goliath emerges from the Philistine lines, his towering figure casting fear as he challenges Israel to send a champion for single combat. His booming voice and unshakable confidence demoralize the Israelite camp,
That is why.
leaving them fearful and uncertain of their fate. As word of Goliath's rise and Saul's unraveling reaches Gibeah, Queen Ahinoam is crushed by despair. Declaring there's nothing left to be done, she forbids even the mention of Hashem's name.
I do not wish to hear that.
Michal, undeterred, suggests turning to God in prayer, but is met with bitterness. Refusing to surrender to hopelessness, Michal quietly retrieves a sacred scroll from the scriptorium and prepares to leave in search of her father.
Phil, have you lost your mind?
Before she can go, Merav intercepts her, urging her to stay, especially with Eshbal gone and their mother broken. But seeing the determination in Michal's eyes, Merav relents, deciding to ride with her.
You died, there'll be no one left to entertain me.
She teases that she wouldn't want to be left behind without anyone to entertain her, but beneath the jest lies something deeper. Unlike their mother, Merav believes there's hope still worth chasing, even into the darkness. Disheartened by the lack of leadership, the warriors of Zebulun abandon the battlefield.
God is not with our king.
Eliab denounces them as cowards, but they challenge him.
Why don't you face the giant?
Adriel intervenes, sympathizing with their disillusionment and offering to lead, while blaming Jonathan for hiding in Saul's tent. Abner rebukes him sharply, but the accusation lingers. Realizing the truth in the accusation, Jonathan intends to face Goliath if necessary. Abner pleads with him, but Jonathan remains resolute.
No other way!
As they ride, Merav wonders if their mother even notices their absence.
By now, Mother must know we're gone.
When Michal hums David's tune, Merav teases, but Michal coldly insists she's done thinking about him after he left their father behind. Later, as Samuel offers a solemn sacrifice with David and Jesse, he declares the atonement complete.
How did you choose it?
The offering, pure and chosen according to the law, is acceptable before God. After sending David back to the fields, Samuel confronts Jesse about the weight he carries. Jesse insists he keeps David from war to protect him, but Samuel probes deeper. He acknowledges David's untamed spirit, fiery like God's own, but reveals Jesse's true struggle, not fear but attachment.
Have God ask anything of me?
Jesse pleads that God demand anything but his son. Samuel, gentle yet resolute, responds that God asks for precisely that, the most cherished, the best of the flock.
To give what we love.
Such is the price of true obedience.
Your fingers will break.
If Jesse refuses to release David, Samuel warns, it will only break him.
Send me your champion.
As Goliath's taunts grow bolder, Abner proposes a daring plan to Jonathan. Lead a covert night raid with Gentile mercenaries to assassinate Goliath in his sleep and end the standoff quietly, without a direct duel.
You'll stay by my father's side.
As David sleeps, he dreams of the commander of the Lord's armies standing in a stream. Sensing holiness, he removes his sandals and bows.
What would you have your servant do?
When he asks what God desires, the commander points to the water, where David retrieves a stained stone. He wakes, troubled and unsure of his purpose, until Jesse's voice calls him, pulling him back to reality. When David arrives home, he finds Jesse preparing a donkey loaded with food for the battlefield. To his surprise, Jesse says David will deliver it himself. But before he goes, Jesse finally reveals long-held truths.
Born an enemy of our people.
David's mother, Nitzevet, was a Gentile, unlike Jesse's first wife, whose noble bloodline was meant to purify Jesse's Moabite heritage through Ruth. Though Nitzevet was loving, her terrifying visions about David's destiny made people uneasy.
Let him rise.
Her dying wish was for Jesse to release David so he could fulfill what she foresaw. Jesse confesses that he kept David in the fields not out of shame,
Because I love you.
but because David was the last piece of Nitzevet he had left.
Forgive me, son.
Overcome with emotion, father and son embrace as Jesse asks for forgiveness and expresses his deep love. Before departing on his covert mission, Jonathan visits Saul's tent to say goodbye, only to find Doeg waiting inside. Tension crackles as Doeg, ever the manipulative Edomite, tries to bargain for the name of the one Samuel anointed in Judah. He warns that Jonathan's mission against the Philistines is doomed. Disgusted, Jonathan rejects the offer and vows that if he dies, he'll make sure Doeg dies first.
It will not be before I watch the life drain from your eyes.
Turning to Saul, Jonathan confesses that he knows the truth about the rift with Samuel. But despite it all, he chooses to remain loyal to his father until the end. As he leaves, Saul, his madness beginning to resurface, relives his haunting vision of Jonathan's death. Outside, Jonathan meets the mercenaries gathered by Abner. Before they depart, Abner gives him a dagger and prays that God will go with him. While David prepares to leave, Jesse blesses him again, reaffirming his love.
I love you.
As Samuel heads off in another direction, he too blesses David, reminding him that the Lord sees his heart, the heart of a roaring lion.
They roar.
Watching his son depart, Jesse calls out to him to rise and meet his destiny.
In Israel!
Under the cover of darkness, Jonathan leads a stealthy band of Gentile mercenaries on a daring raid, hoping Goliath's assassination will unite Israel's tribes and shatter the stalemate gripping the war. Meanwhile, Zebulun's forces silently withdraw from the battlefield across the valley. As Jonathan's group draws closer to Goliath's tent, one of the mercenaries, trusted and close, reveals himself as a double agent. What was meant to be a precision strike turns into a catastrophic ambush. At the same time, the retreating forces of Zebulun are caught off guard and massacred by hidden Philistine units, their exit path transformed into a killing field. Michal and Merav are forced into hiding just as the Philistines launch their surprise attack on Zebulun's forces. Jonathan fights valiantly, but the odds are overwhelming.
You are defeated.
Eventually, he is overpowered and dragged before King Achish. Forced to kneel in chains, he faces the Philistine monarch. The next day, the Israelites are weary, supplies dwindling, and morale crumbling.
Starving men will do anything.
Then Goliath emerges, towering and triumphant, delivering a cruel psychological blow. He hurls the severed heads of Jonathan's fallen mercenaries across the valley, grisly proof of the failed night raid.
Sent to me last night.
With chilling precision, he follows with a massive spear, shattering Israel's water cart and severing their last supply. The act is both strategic and symbolic, as Goliath mocks Saul and the God of Israel with thunderous scorn. Among the stunned Israelite ranks, only Abner knows the raid's true cost. As fear grips him, Adriel arrives with grave news. 8 tribes are secretly assembling. Abner should either join them in their bid for new leadership or fall with Saul.
So where is your God?
In the Philistine camp, Achish mocks Jonathan's daring but futile raid, sarcastically asking why Samuel hasn't appeared to offer sacrifices. He boasts that he has finished uniting the 5 Philistine armies, which now encircle the Israelites and outnumber them 3-1.
Why not ride in on us?
When Jonathan boldly asks why they haven't attacked, Achish responds with a history lesson. His ancestors crossed the sea to conquer Egypt and Canaan, while Jonathan's were slaves who resisted Moses' call to freedom. The Philistines, he claims, were born to rule, the Hebrews to serve. When Jonathan recalls how God drowned Egypt's armies in the sea, Achish sneers,
"Then where is he?"
asking where Yahweh is now and ridiculing Jonathan's reverence for the divine name. But Jonathan sees past his bravado to the fear beneath. Infuriated, Achish sends him back to camp with a chilling warning.
Convince him to surrender.
Surrender by tomorrow or face annihilation. He promises to personally kill Jonathan.
My arrow will pierce your heart.
Just as Jonathan saw in his vision, along with his sisters and mother. Meanwhile, Queen Ahinoam searches for her daughters, pressing Kezia, the household servant, for answers. At first evasive, Kezia finally breaks down, revealing their whereabouts and begging forgiveness.
To aid the king in his time of need.
Enraged that Kezia chose loyalty to her daughters over obedience, Ahinoam coldly dismisses her from service.
Do not cast me out! Go!
Arriving at the camp that morning, Michal and Merav are stunned by the hopelessness hanging over the Israelite soldiers. Michal sends Merav to find Abner and Jonathan, while she goes directly to Saul. She finds him in bed, trapped in a haze of darkness, tormented by the spirit of Agag, the Amalekite king whose memory still festers in Saul's soul. Though her presence offers a flicker of light, Saul remains locked in his despair.
I brought you something.
Undeterred, Michal begins reading from a sacred scroll, invoking Moses' words to the Israelites before facing the giants.
You saw how he carried you.
The Lord your God himself will fight for you just as he did in Egypt.
He will show you the way back.
Her voice cuts through the spiritual fog, reaching the broken king. Tears stream down Saul's face as he finally stirs, shaken by her words. When Michal pleads for him to rise, Saul breaks free from his torment and collapses into her arms, finally awakened.
He always does.
When news of the worsening crisis in Elah reaches Gibeah, Bisay, the witch spiritist, urges Ahinoam to flee. But the queen refuses. She recalls how, as a young girl, her family sojourned in Egypt and watched Pharaoh parade through the streets, radiant in gold like the sun. Israel, she says, had no such ruler, so she gave her life to shaping Saul into a king worthy of uniting the tribes, one who could rival Pharaoh in glory. Now, with her dream crumbling, she resolves to die beside it.
I can die with my dream.
At that moment, to her astonishment, Eshbal returns, accompanied by none other than Ahimelech, the high priest. With a donkey in tow, David travels from Bethlehem to the valley of Elah, singing and praying as he goes. He arrives just in time to hear Goliath deliver his final ultimatum, and is appalled by the silence of Israel's warriors.
What are they doing?
His fellow countrymen scoff.
There is one God.
Nathaniel, his cowardly brother, mockingly dares him to face the giant.
Here's our champion. He wants to fight the giant.
Eliab suspects David only came to watch the battle and rebukes him.
I will fight
Not encourage him.
But David insists he comes with their father's blessing, and declares he will fight Goliath. As tensions rise, Abner arrives and interrupts, summoning David to play his lyre and soothe the troubled King Saul. Upon entering the king's tent, David boldly declares that he has not come to play music but to fight.
Let him speak.
He recounts how the Lord delivered him from the lion and the bear while protecting his flock,
Struck it and killed it.
expressing unwavering faith that God will also deliver him from the Philistine giant. Eliab scoffs, but Saul is stirred by David's conviction. Overruling Abner's objections, Saul names David champion and offers his own armor,
I name you champion.
a powerful gesture of trust and symbolic transfer of royal authority. As the queen confers with Eshbal and Ahimelech about Israel's bleak prospects,
You must crown me king.
Eshbal urges her to crown him king, claiming he can unite the northern tribes and restore the nation. He warns the Philistines will soon destroy the sacred scrolls and defile her. Ahinoam resists, demanding to know where he's been. Eshbal offers no details, only declaring his past dead and himself reborn, as the sole hope for Israel and his mother.
We are Israel's only hope.
In the Israelite camp, Abner fights to keep the fractured armies from falling apart.
Where are you going?
When Michal sees David clad in Saul's armor, she whispers that he looks like a king.
You look like a king.
David confesses he doesn't feel like one. Michal produces a strip of parchment, a paraphrase of God's charge to Joshua, and slips it into his armor. As the soldiers jeer and murmur, doubt creeps in, but Michal steadies him. She reminds David that God chooses the overlooked, the unlikely, those with hearts he alone sees, just as she sees the power inside of him in spite of her fear.
I believe in you.
With a kiss, she sends him forth, begging him to slay the giant and return to her.
I cannot wear this armor, and I need to find a stream.
As angry Israelites gather outside Saul's tent, Abner holds them back. Jonathan returns and relays King Achish's threat, but Abner, relieved he's alive, shares news of Saul's chosen champion, stunning Jonathan. When Adriel demands to stop David, Abner threatens him, until Saul appears, quieting the crowd and confronting his warriors with unexpected resolve.
Try to take it from me.
David searches for a stream and finds a stone, just like in his vision of the commander of the Lord's army. Jonathan confronts him, asking how a shepherd and musician has become Israel's champion.
I'm the only one who offered.
David challenges him, accusing him of forgetting the old stories and fearing the giant more than trusting God. Jonathan admits he's not sure God is still with them.
He's with us there when we choose to face our fear.
David replies that God is not with those who cower, only with those who face their fears.
Bethlehem.
When Jonathan asks who he is, David says he's from Bethlehem. Upon learning David met Samuel, Jonathan is shaken, but ultimately prays for him.
May God be with you.
Tension flares as Adriel tries to stop David from approaching Goliath, only to be halted by Abner's blade.
Call him back!
Israelite soldiers jeer while Netharniel and Eliab beg David to turn back, calling it impossible.
Why are you not afraid?
David replies that this is the difference between them.
I divide!
Drawing strength from God's words to Joshua,
Get out of the way!
he prays simply for God to give him the ground.
God, give me this ground.
As David steps forward, Goliath mocks and curses him.
I ask for a king!
Inspired by David's courage, Jonathan calls for his horse and tells Abner to prepare to follow if David succeeds.
Maybe the king really has gone mad.
Undaunted, David responds to Goliath's blasphemy with his famous declaration of faith, drawing laughter from both Achish and the towering giant.
I know there is a God in Israel.
You do not deserve to come near me!
David charges toward Goliath, dodging 2 spears, but the third grazes him and knocks him down. Michal watches in terror. As Goliath mocks David for daring to face him, Eliab raises his bow to shoot, only to be stopped by Jonathan. On the hill, to Achish's dismay, Samuel appears and offers a sacrifice, blessing the battle. Refusing to give up, Michal prays and cries out for David to rise.
Rise up, David.
As if summoned by her voice, David stands, bloodied but resolute, clutching a stone like the one from his vision. Goliath, furious, hurls another spear for his mother, but David evades it and slings his stone. It strikes Goliath's forehead, and for a breathless moment he stands still, then crashes to the earth. Silence follows. Then David rushes forward, seizes Goliath's sword, and cuts off the giant's head. Raising it high, he turns to see the armies roar and charge.
David!
Get my horse and my armor!
Israel and Philistine clashing as Saul, Michal, and Merav watch in wonder. While Saul battles the Philistines, Ahinoam crowns Eshbaal, and Ahimelech reads God's exhortation to Joshua, unaware of the unfolding victory on the battlefield. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments section. Your support is greatly appreciated, my dear friend. Feel free to click on the next video. Thank you.